We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. The first item is any announcements from the committee at this point?
Nope.
Nope. Not any mouse. Move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a request to review the previous meeting minutes?
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
Motion by Selena, second by Cecilia. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on to the other item on the consent agenda, resolution authorizing the city controller to transfer certain city funds budget from different budget carriers. It's R011921. Any questions from the committee? Do you have a motion to recommend for approval?
So moved.
I'll make a motion, John.
Motion by
This is
David,
Dave.
second by Selena. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Moving on to our regular items, no resolutions, which is a market outlook discussion. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
Great.
welcome. It's great to
Thank
see you.
you.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, same to you. I wish I was down there in person, but it looks like I'd be lonely if I was in the municipal building. How's everybody weathering things?
Just fine.
Good.
Good.
Things are pretty good okay up here in Tippecanoe County. I think we just got crossed over into the red county zone like today or the day before, so not quite out of the woods yet, but I think we're getting there. Well, I'm mostly just gonna give you an update on kind of my thoughts and outlook on the new year. It's been kind of a crazy couple of months. So if I can get my screen share going, I'll get right to it. I think the slide deck was emailed to you as well. Hopefully you can follow along with me there if you can't see the screen as well. So give this a try.
Yeah, and if you can't share yours, Jessica, I could probably, nope, I see it. So I think we're good.
Okay, super. All right, well, just kind of to get started off, I think most folks that I'm talking to, one of the biggest worries or thoughts on everyone's mind is obviously activity in DC and the changes taking place. So I've kind of been talking about this all year, just with it being an election year, but you know, the economy and the market tends to go its own way, not necessarily based on who's in office. So I think that's comforting just to separate the two, whatever your feelings are there. You know, long term, our economy tends to grow, and it doesn't so much matter whether it's red or blue. I think further, you know, a unique thing with what's happened after last week is the Democratic sweep of DC. So last 4 years, we had Republican president, Republican Senate, and Democratic House. That combination has happened 10 times and has in those 10 times averaged the highest market return of any combination. But that's not to say it's the only way that the market goes up. And with Democrat control of all three, that's happened 22 times, and the average for the market has been 14.5%, so not too shabby. So I think that's to say anyone saying that the last 4 years drove the market and now it's doomed or anything of that sort is completely detached from the reality of how the market goes. So I think there, my view, there's really good things ahead for the market. Now in your portfolio, we can't invest in the stock market, but they do tie together, and I'll get a little bit into that. One of the major things that affect your portfolio is what's happening with the Fed funds rate and interest rates in general, but especially the Fed funds rate, because the city portfolio is tied to state statutes keeping us in the 0 to 5 year time frame, which pushes us really up against the Fed funds rate on the inside of the curve. And it can be hard to get, steepness and yield in the first 5 years. More of it happens longer out. So what we're looking at, the Fed is signaling they're willing to let inflation run a little higher if it comes to that. and they're not expecting to raise the Fed funds rate before 2023. Now, that being said, there's been a lot of talk lately about inflation, watching inflation, just an awful lot written and discussed about whether all of the spending that we've had is going to generate inflation and a lot of other things. So I want to talk about that a bit. If you look at the national debt compared to GDP, this was before the most recent stimulus that's coming out, but just bottom right corner, if you can see this, okay, I'll try to blow it up. We are now at almost 110% of GDP in terms of where our federal debt is. That is on par with basically where we were after World War II. So pretty amazing when you think of it. The debt that we took on fighting a global war is kind of where we're at now, and not just from COVID, but some other things that we battled in the recent past, and just, our spending has crept up. But certainly the COVID stimulus has really pushed us, to a new threshold. And that is definitely something to look at and be concerned about. Now, that being said, look at what that did for us, right? So if you think back to unemployment spikes after recessions, so the most recent one, of course, was the financial crisis, which the market bottomed in March of 2009. So the peak in unemployment didn't happen until after that, about 6 months later, which is, to say that unemployment is a lagging indicator, so it keeps getting worse kind of after you've got past the worst part of maybe the market drop. And then you look at how long it took us to kind of grind our way back to get unemployment down. So we peaked in 2009 with unemployment at 10%, and we had to grind our way down over 10 years almost to get back down to, a 4% level, which is really healthy and really good. So we had a really tight labor market coming into 2020, but that took a lot of steady work over 10 years. So, now you look at what happened with COVID, how quickly that put so many people out of work, but also incredibly how quickly Congress responded with stimulus to help us come right back down from that. So you see the spike up to over 15% or close to 15%, and then the really rapid drop back down to, I'd say now we're in the 6 to 7% range nationally. So yes, it was a lot of money that we spent, but I think the lessons have been learned that it takes money to recover, and the faster that you do it, the less permanent damage hopefully is done to the economy. So that, that's to say that it might still be a bit of a grind from here to get back to, full employment of where we were before COVID happened. So I do think it'll be several years before we get back to where wages are being pressured. And back to the inflation question or point, before COVID happened, if you think about it, we were at 50-year low unemployment and all-time market highs, and we were already starting to pull back on our Fed funds rate. We were already lowering Fed funds rate before COVID came about, before 2020 even turned the calendar. So to assume that just because, we spent a bunch of money doesn't mean that necessarily is going to create inflation or higher interest rates. It may even make it harder. Looking again at inflation measures, obviously there's things that have inflated, home prices, stock market, maybe the home goods store and Lowe's and Home Depot if you've been doing any projects while you're at home. But overall, headline inflation is still pretty sub where the Fed wants it to be at the 2% level. So again, there's quite a bit of room to run there. I do think as the vaccines rolled out this year, and as people are kind of loosened up and going about doing normal things, I imagine there'll be a big demand for, indoor dining at restaurants. We've lost a lot of restaurants, unfortunately. There'll be demand for travel and things. We've lost a lot of those businesses, that capacity. So I think there could be a short-term, supply demand rub that could definitely spike prices and look like significant inflation over a quick time frame. But my best guess is that will be somewhat temporary. It'll be something that maybe is part of the story of 2021, but not necessarily a permanent long-term increase. I think it might be a bump up for the year, but then a settle back down is my view. The best thing that I can maybe relate where we are now, I think, is going back, like I said, to after World War II. What happened then when we had all of that debt. And if you look at the years following that, and you look at, again, for your portfolio, what happened to interest rates and what happened to bonds, going through the 1950s, 10-year treasuries, the average annual return was 0.78. So all that spending didn't create a lot of inflation. There were some years in there with high inflation, high GDP growth, but overall, bond rates did not, skyrocket and were not a good investment. So the average annual real return from bonds was actually negative in the 50s, pretty much flat in the 60s, and only in the 70s did the rates get somewhere, palatable, but because of inflation at that point, even that was a negative overall return. So I do think that might be more of the precedent for where we see rates going ahead from here, rather than high inflation and high bond returns. Another measure to look at is the comparison between stock performance and bond performance. So if you look at a 20-year clip, so this will be going back to 2000 till today, the stock market has averaged around 6%, depending on where you pick, before COVID or during COVID. So back in March, if you took the bottom of the market, stocks had averaged less than 5% from a 20-year time window, and bonds had averaged just over 5%. So you actually had a 20-year average return for the bond market that was higher than the stock market. And that includes some pretty good years we've had lately. So I know that a lot of people think, maybe inflation is going to be high and that will pick up interest rates, and bonds could be a good place to get a return. But that's not really historically what we've seen happen before. So likely, I think, not necessarily the case for our situation. Again, here they're looking past 1949, and on a 5-year, bonds return 1.8, 10-year 1.3, and even over 20 years, only 2.4. So it's not something really to write home about. And if we're stuck in the 0 to 5 range on risk-free bonds, it's going to be, I think, a lot harder to generate the kind of revenue that really matters to you guys from this that we've seen in the past. The flip side of that is, how bad could it get if we did have an existential scare or something? Could we get to a point where we have to pay the bank money to hold our cash? We've seen some of that in Europe. I don't think we're going to go that way. I really think our economy is going to come back on track and do well, and that a lot of money will flow from cash into other assets. So I don't foresee that, but I would say maybe that is a possibility as much as super high inflation. I think they're both kind of tail risks that aren't impossible, but probably not the base case or most likely scenario that I would really, plan around. So, again, looking at where we are, it took us 10 years after 07, 08 to get up to a 2% Fed funds rate. We started pulling back before before 2020 happened, and then we've had to drop it to zero. And the Fed, the market, nobody's even trying to suggest that's going to come up anytime soon. A lot of times the Fed will try to lead the market up and say, well, our outlook is for this increase and that increase, and sometimes the market kind of says, no, we're not buying it. So you'll see a split between the blue and the brown, which are the Fed's view and then the market's view. They're all just pretty much completely aligned on the Fed funds rate going nowhere for the next few years, unfortunately. So, given where we're stuck in here in the 5-year range, we're pretty hard pressed to get more than 0.5% on the longest term investments that we can make. So again, we're trying to keep this as a positive yielding portfolio, but it's not going to be the kind of cash flow generator in the next few years that it has been for the city in the past. And I'm anxious and excited for that to change, but I can only do so much. As long as we're limited by statute to keep inside of that short window and risk-free, I think it's going to be hard to find yield for the next few years. So that's kind of my quick overview of, I think, where we're at and some of the things to look to ahead for the coming year. I can figure out how to turn off the screen share. And there it is. Okay. So happy to answer any questions or give you any feedback. What are your thoughts?
Well, Jessica, I guess I only tell you, yeah, you have kind of a narrow bandwidth of what you can invest our cash, and so the main thing is, really for us, for the citizens and for taxpayers, it's the safety of the investment, where we know it's pretty ironclad, and when you have those type of investments, in today's market, you're just not going to get the return that you're going to get otherwise. That's right.
And you're right, it does provide a lot of safety to have it collateralized in a debt obligation of the U.S. government than on a bank balance sheet, although I think banks are super well funded after the changes from 08-09. So I wouldn't really call that a risk, but certainly it's hard to get any safer than what we have. Yeah.
Any other questions for Jessica?
Jessica, I want to say thank you for putting this together. Appreciate the presentation.
Thanks, Lena.
I just think, wow. Are we really seeking alpha? Oh, wait a second. We can't seek alpha here. So, and like John stated, it's all about the safety. So I get it. Yeah, we'd like to see better returns, obviously. But,
right.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to be patient. We've got some cash in the portfolio, and we've had a pretty good run up in the 10-year over the past couple weeks even. The 5 years improved quite a bit, but the 2-year hasn't budged. We're, kind of stuck in the 0.1115 range on the treasuries. So unfortunately, we don't want to just dump everything that we have in cash out in 5 years. We really have to be patient and space it and hope that we continue to get, maybe some improvement. I think hopefully as 2021 goes along, if we have some of that inflation scare, the bond market could reflect that, even if it's temporary, which would give us some buying opportunity. That I don't, want to mislead you. We're not going to see 4 or 5%, but, maybe I'm trying to be patient for that, because I think that could be a real opportunity. Our really only reasonable opportunity on the horizon that I can see to do anything creative within our parameters to try to get some more return for you guys. So hopefully maybe we can pick some things up through the summer, and I'll have maybe some things to celebrate the next time that we visit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. John, real quick, the only thing I'd say is thank you, Jessica, for putting together that summary. It's always neat to see things over a longer period timeline than a 2-year or a 4-year election cycle, which we in the States sometimes mistakenly think through. The only thing that I've always been watching that, our GDP versus where our debt level is, it's kind of like your house. You want to have a certain debt level within, what your income is. And as long as it's at right level, then you're okay. And we keep creeping up and creeping up. And then at the end of World War II, obviously no one could compete with us because, well, it was the end of World War II. Yeah, and we were only going to be able to expand and nobody could compete with us. And at this point, that's not the case. So it's more of a longer term vision as to, how's that going to transpire the next number of years when we are up to basically the debt level, what our income is, so to speak. But every year that goes by, we have more and more competitors that compete with us on an equal footing.
Yeah, that is true. And I think, too, the U.S. has really dominated. I mean, if you look at the proportion of, this is kind of not directly related, but the market cap of the U.S. stock market compared to the globe versus the GDP that comes from the U.S. compared to the globe. So we only make up about a quarter of the globe's GDP, but our market cap is about 60% of the global market cap. So, if you add up the value of all the stocks on the planet, 60% of them are US, but 60% of the globe's revenue and GDP is not the US. It's only 25%. So there's a pretty big gap there, which kind of goes back to your point, David, about, US dominance going forward. It's probably going to be hard to keep that level.
Yeah, we've always been the safe haven, and hopefully we are still in the future. Forget the last 2 weeks.
So true.
Hopefully, yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
The last, anyway. Yeah,
Maybe
I'll just stop talking.
Meetings remotely isn't so bad these next weeks. Yep. Yes. I do think that the dramatic fiscal response that we had last year, that's going to continue. And honestly, that is pain in the short term. It's debt in the short term, but hopefully we can grow out of that. And we keep enough people at work and get them back to work. I think there could be really good things ahead for the economy. And it's going to be impossible to pay that off. So the main hope is growth. And, I'm optimistic about where we could be headed. So fingers crossed. Well, hope you guys stay safe. I really appreciate the time and opportunity to present to you. I appreciate your business, and I have to say I appreciate your service, especially these days. Staying at home and being with our family has been nice this year. I've kind of taken a back seat from some of the volunteer things that I've done, and I feel a little guilty, but it's definitely appreciated what you guys do for your community, and I recognize that. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Well, I look forward to catching you guys next time. And Lisa, Lawrence, and the team and I are in touch. So, Lisa, if you need anything, let me know. I can't hear you.
Lisa, you're on mute.
I muted myself. Sorry, I didn't accidentally talk during your thing. I was going to say, if you guys, we're in touch with Jessica. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We can let her know. We're put her in touch with you directly. So, yep.
Okay. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye, guys.
Meeting.
Anything else for any announcements, Lisa? Anything else you need to add
No, nothing. I mean, we'll cover, hopefully in February, we'll have a good kind of idea where we end the year. Right now, we've gotten kind of a good starting ground. We're working through kind of some POs, some things as to where we stand. So have that hopefully in February, give you guys an update. All the other funds are pretty set, except we're still looking at the general fund. We ended the year, we talk a lot about the health fund in this department, this committee. And so luckily for us, the one benefit to COVID was not a lot of people did surgeries this year. Had by far and away our best year in the health fund since I've been here. So we're actually going to be able to have some money actually still in that fund into 2021, about $500,000. So that's a big step that's a huge thing for us. So as we continue to look and see where we end the year, if we want to put some money from 2020 in to continue to help build that, we're kind of looking at that. So that's good, big plus. Unfortunately with COVID, that's helped us get there, but we'll take what we can get out of this. So like I said, that's a big step. We did submit at the end of December our additional claim to the state of Indiana. If you may recall, the governor had made some more money available to comply with the public health orders. So that's like contact tracing, rental for, clinics to do testing, vaccinations, things like that. It's about 10% of your original allocation amount, so a little over 300,000. So that's been submitted to IFA, and so communications with the public. So that's the last little bit, and then we'll see with the most recent stimulus what comes out for hopefully vaccinations now. There's no direct government assistance, kind of like in the last CARES Act. But hopefully with the vaccination money, we'll get some of that, and then we'll be able to continue to fund and look for those opportunities as we move forward. Have a quick update as to where we are here in the controller's office right now.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else from the committee? All right. Thank you very much. I have a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
A motion by Selena, second by David. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the evening.
You guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.